Well, I think we were talking about living on Keystone Avenue and what some of this was like, the peddler coming down the alley and so forth and so on. We also had a coal shed because we heated with coal to begin with. And then you had to have something that would automatically fill coal in every once in a while, so you didn't have to get up in the middle of the night. But the coal shed came and they had to come to a window outside of the basement, and that's where they dumped the coal into this big room. The whole big room was set aside just for coal. Wow. Yeah. So, but I did talk about doing the laundry, I know. And then I think I told about the people that lived around us. The people upstairs of us were the Stelzers, and they came, he came as a German immigrant after World War I, and was a house painter. And when he earned enough money to buy furniture and to rent an apartment, he sent for his wife and his daughter. They had had 2 daughters, but one daughter died. She was born prematurely, and they managed to keep her alive for a couple of years, but then she died before Enna. The Stelzers were Eddie and Enna Stelzer and their daughter Mia. And Mia was about 4 years old, I think, when she came. And of course, Mia and Enna couldn't speak any English. They only knew German. And we didn't know any German. So while they were learning English, we learned a few German words. And became very close. And they were really the only, they were the second tenants that Mumma and Mutti had in that apartment. And they were there for as long as Mumma and Mutti were had the house. So they lived there for many, many years. And my aunt and uncle I told about living in just a block from us, the same address. But then I had another uncle, and he lived on the south side. And we didn't get to see them as often because that was like going to another town to go to the south side. And it would take us an hour and a half on streetcars to get there.
What was his name?
That was Gustav, Uncle Gustav. And his daughter was Harriet. And Uncle Gustav would come and visit every once in a while. And then my Aunt Elsie would come over too, and they'd have coffee together. And that was always an occasion. And that was a time to read all the letters that had come from Sweden. Because of course there was no email and there was no telephoning. You waited for the letters to come by ship. So you didn't hear that often. That was a big occasion when the 3 of them got together and could read what had happened in Sweden. The other friends that were really close were the Blomgrens, Anita and her mother and dad, and the Johnsons, Isabel and her parents, and the Borgs and the Hallstroms and the Blooms and the Helsbergs. All these were Swedish immigrants who were good friends. And so I heard Swedish quite a bit. Anyway, while we were living there on Keystone Avenue, I told about going to school in the little portable schools, and finally going to this brand new junior high school. And in 1930, what was it, 33, that I graduated from junior high. And then I had to go to another high school, and that was Roosevelt High, and that I still had to take 3, I took 2, then I only had to take 2 buses to get there. But we graduated in February, which was a dumb time to graduate. That's what they did in Chicago. They had mid-semester. And so when I finally, we were there for 1 semester, and then it was the middle of the Depression, so they were closing high schools and closing junior highs and making all kinds of adjustments. And they finally changed our junior high into a senior high. So I had to go back to my junior high. And in 1936, I graduated from high school there. And that summer, Mutti decided that it was time that Momo should get back to Sweden, even though it was the Depression. How he managed to do it, I don't know. But we were able to go with a tour group. So we toured, it was a group of people from Chicago that went together, and it really was quite a trip. Everything was paid for, and it really wasn't a lot of money. I wish I could remember how much it was, but it was so little for what we got. We took the train first to Washington, D.C., and there we stayed in a hotel overnight, and we toured Washington a little bit. Got to the White House, and I don't remember all that we saw in Washington. And then we went on the next day to New York, and that's where we boarded the Aquitania, the Cunard Line ship. And when we were midway across the ocean, we passed the Queen Mary, and the Queen Mary was making its maiden voyage. That was the first Queen Mary, and it was at night. And they lit up the whole ship, and it was just like a floating hotel sitting opposite us there in the middle of the ocean. When we got to England, we were able to spend a couple of days in London, and then we took the ship across to France, to Cherbourg, and then we boarded the train and went to Paris, and then we went from Paris to Germany, and then from Germany we were in Berlin, and that was in 1936, the year of the Olympics, but we were there just before that. And unfortunately, I was the one who did the corresponding. I wrote the letters to Mutti, and we were pretty busy, and for some reason or other, the letters didn't come as quickly from Germany as my father was hoping for, and he was so worried that I was probably saying things that I shouldn't say, and I'd be stuck in jail. But we did see the Hitler Youth marching, and it was a scary time. We also, the Stelzers had relatives left in Germany, and we visited with Anna's sister in Cologne. So we stopped in Cologne, and they took us to see the Kölner Dome. So, we were really lucky to be there at the time we were. Luckily, during the war, when they were bombing Cologne, they spared the cathedral. That was a lucky thing. But the little bit of German that we had learned from the Stelzers, learning while they were learning English, helped us with his relatives. We stood there with a dictionary, but we knew a few words, so we were able to communicate a little bit. That was nice. Kind of fun. And then, of course, we finally got to Sassnitz, and there we got the ferry to Sweden.